Welcome back to another episode of The Garden Path. I'm Christine Paxia, and today's episode will be all about hydrangeas. And I get questions all the time on why don't my hydrangeas bloom. So in today's episode, I'm hoping to address some of your questions, talk about the different varieties that are out there, and maybe you'll learn a little something. I am standing in front of a very old paniculata variety, and this is sort of like a tree. It has been here for many years and is blooming right now, which is late August, and the bees love it. So hopefully I won't get stung at this episode because it wouldn't be pretty, but I hope you will tune in and enjoy this segment. For most people, when you say hydrangea, you think of the beautiful blue macrophylla type that grow abundantly on Cape Cod, on Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard, and in many gardens. So this type of variety is extremely common and extremely temperamental. So I get questions all the time on why didn't my hydrangea bloom, when to prune it, and what do I do? So it all depends on many things. The weather is one thing, when you pruned it, how far down you pruned it, and just extreme cold snaps. So 2 winters ago, you recall, we had a very mild winter. Everyone was rejoicing that, oh my gosh, it's 70 degrees in March, yahoo. Well, what that did was faked out the hydrangeas into leafing out and starting to grow. And then we had an extreme cold snap, which froze everything off and deadened its tracks. So we'll go to pruning. So for this type of hydrangea, you really don't want to prune it below the flower. So because, as you can see from this stalk, there are little knobs in between the leaves. Those are the flowers and the growth for next year. This type of hydrangea requires old wood to flower. So I sort of waited before pruning it this year. And as you see, there are still a lot of old, ugly sticks here. I was very optimistic and hopeful that we'd get some flowers. And in some cases, it did flower, but in other cases, it did not. So this year, I had more blooms than last year, but still not as many as capacity. So again, if I was to prune this, I would prune it now, just taking off the spent flower and leaving these to grow, because this will be the basis for next year's growth. Some varieties of endless summer, you can cut back a little more and they may bloom, but if we have another hot winter followed by an extremely cold snap, they will die again. So that is one reason why two reasons why your hydrangeas may not bloom. Another question I get is, how do I make them blue? And that all depends on soil content. If it's an alkaline soil or an acidic soil. So if you want to sweeten up your soil, you add alkaline, and that will increase the blueness. There are little things that you can buy at the garden centers that will say, make your hydrangea blue. But in my yard, I have a lot of pine trees, so they will stay blue because the soil is acidic and I get blue no matter what. It's tricky if I have a red hydrangea, it will always turn purple on me, and no matter what I put in the soil, it's not going to really change it because I just have too much pine going on here. If you are unsure of the pH levels in your soil, you can easily get a soil test done by mailing in a form to UMass. It's UMass Extension, and if you write to me at miltongardenpath@gmail.com, I'd be happy to provide you the link. It's very inexpensive. You do a test around your yard and you check the box as to what you want to grow, and it will tell you what to add. So if you want to make sure that your hydrangeas will turn blue, you add a little sulfur to the soil. If you want to make sure that they're a little more pink, you can sweeten it up by adding alkaline like lime, and that should do the trick. So these are everyone's favorite And another question I get is, why do they grow so abundantly on the islands? It's the climate. The climate's a little milder. They like the salt, the sand, and all that, so they will bloom like crazy there. So I hope that clears it up for the Macrophylla type, which is the most common. It's also called the French hydrangea, the mophead. And this is an old plant that's been here for many years. I don't know the particular variety, but another type of Macrophylla we'll show you on the other side, which is lace cap. So there are many to choose from, and your local garden centers would have a good supply. So I hope that helps. Another type of hydrangea is the Hydrangea paniculata. And this particular type of hydrangea does not need old wood to bloom. It will create new blooms on just new growth. And I want to point out the bark that develops over the years. And I would say this particular plant is over 50 years old. I haven't done much to it, but I do prune out the dead wood periodically every spring. I sort of try to wait to see what's turning into leaves and what's not. And as you can see, there's a lot of dead. It's easy to prune, and it just forms this beautiful canopy that is full of blooms for the bees to enjoy and for me to enjoy as well as everybody that walks by. Another nice thing about this type of hydrangea, these flowers will dry nicely. All you have to do is cut them, stick them in a basket or stick them in a vase, and you'll have an arrangement that will give you some flowers throughout the entire winter. So paniculata comes in a lot of varieties. There is a variety that is pink, and this is a white one. It's a very old type, and also considered to be the tree type of hydrangea. Another type of Macrophylla hydrangea, as I mentioned, is the lace cap. And you can see the lace cap is a little lighter. It has these beautiful little flowers. The blossoms of hydrangeas are actually clusters of individual flowers known as inflorescence. These flower heads are comprised of small fertile flowers and larger, showier, sterile flowers. And you treat the lace cap hydrangea the same way you would the big mophead. This particular variety is called Lady in Red, and it gets its name because the stem is kind of reddish, the leaves are reddish, and in the fall the leaves turn even more red, and it's just beautiful. And it's also one of the last blooms that I get from a Macrophylla hydrangea, and the color blue is just terrific. So it looks like I've got a good crop here this year. These are all buds that are coming out. Again, this was old wood that created from last year's growth. So I love the lace cap hydrangeas. They're just a little bit different enough. So we've talked about Hydrangea macrophylla and Hydrangea paniculata. Another type of hydrangea is the oak leaf, but the Latin name is quercifolia. And this particular hydrangea blooms late summer, and it does not require old wood to bloom. So they're a little bit longer, they're usually white, and they create a very large shrub. So this type of hydrangea, you would need to give some space to grow. And it's given its name because the foliage resembles an oak leaf. This particular variety is called snowflake, and when it is in full bloom, they are beautiful and white, and they're just very, very showy. So it's one of my favorite hydrangeas that's not the macrophylla. Another type of hydrangea is the Hydrangea arborescens, and this variety is called Annabelle. What's really great about this variety, or this type of hydrangea, it does not require old wood to bloom. So you could cut it down by a third in the fall and again in the spring. So this is a great hydrangea to plant at a spot that's maybe next to your driveway that would get a lot of snow, that would get beaten up, because if the snow fell on it and the stems were damaged, it doesn't matter. Your plant will always flower. One thing I need to mention about hydrangea, it's the beginning of the word is hydra, which means water, and these plants require a lot of water and need it. So be sure to water your hydrangeas frequently, otherwise they'll wilt. So I'm standing in a patch of arborescens that's more than 10 years old. I have divided this and given some to friends, but it does take a little while to establish the roots. They can be a little temperamental, but you can relocate them and divide them. So arborescens, and the popular variety is called Annabelle. The last type of hydrangea, Anomalia petiolaris, also known as the climbing hydrangea, is the last hydrangea that we'll talk about today. This beauty is something that you would see along stone walls, climbing up the side of a wall, or just on a trellis. It's majestic, it covers up some space and giving you a green vision, and it has beautiful white lacy type blooms in the late summer, early fall. So that sort of wraps up all of the types of hydrangeas: the microphylla, the paniculata, the arborescens, the quercifolia, and the petiolaris here. Remember, they need a lot of water and a little bit of care, and some require pruning, some do not. If you'd like additional information, you can always go to the Massachusetts Master Gardener website, where they do provide fact sheets on hydrangea care and different types of hydrangeas. So again, thank you for tuning in to this episode on hydrangeas. And referencing back to previous episodes, it's now the fall. It's a good time to transplant your peonies. It's also a good time to plant your bulbs. So enjoy your growing season. Very interesting.